Hello, this is Ben Ward at Time Gentleman, as you can see, recording a commentary about my interactive comic Blue Hag Christmas. This is a comic I made for a game jam for the Idle Thumbs podcast / forums. So it was a winter themed jam, and so I thought it might be nice to do kind of a British folklore type thing. So I found this, I think it's mainly Scottish, I think there might be equivalents elsewhere, but a Scottish character called the Cailleach Burr, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which is basically a blue hag. So I called it Blue Hag Christmas. There's a bit of an Elvis reference as well. And I was going for a Fiona Staples art style, obviously nowhere near as accomplished, but the kind of thick black lines and then the two colour toning on there as well. And I just did the titles square as quickly as possible. I couldn't be bothered to think of anything good for that. Originally I was doing it with JPEGs, and there's a lot of artifacting. I haven't got used to I haven't worked out what techniques to use best. So I recently went back and tidied it all up. It's just a bit nicer and a little bit less embarrassing. 41, that's a Star Wars reference, TK41, why aren't you at your post? And also I got the speech bubbles looking better because this is done in an engine called Quine, which is like Twine for comics, and someone on the Idle Thumbs forums is developing it at the moment. It's in early alpha, so it's still got a few bugs and stuff, and the in-engine speech bubbles weren't working very well, so I did them as separate elements. You can still see a bit of the artifacting here and stuff. I can be bothered to completely get rid of it for what was supposed to be a jam game. You know, it's not supposed to be perfect. So now you've got choices here. These used to be amber. They were like kind of orange by default in the engine. You have to edit the CSS, and pink stands out a bit better. People pointed out that it wasn't obvious what was clickable, and I realised, especially because I've got everything on wood, on brown wood here, it really didn't stand out at all. So first here you've got a comic, magic comic, which I won't play at the moment because I think I'll do a different video for that, because I've since split it out into its own game. But what happened was, while I was waiting for John to polish up Quine a bit more, I thought, well, I'll have a bit of practice, I'll get used to the engine, I'll give him a bit of feedback, and I'll get used to using my graphics tablet, because I've just bought my first one for this, which is another reason why the art isn't fantastic. Yeah, so I thought, well, I need something to practice on, and I don't want to spend time coming up with the story and stuff. I just wanted to draw pictures and stuff without thinking and link them all together. I'd already done a Quine game that I could use to adapt. So I did that, and then by the time I kind of got halfway through doing that, by the time Quine was ready to go, or I realised that it wasn't going to get any better and I needed to get on with my actual main story, the Blue Hag story. I'd done so much of this comic that I felt like I may as well finish it off and put it all in there as part of the game, so I actually had something to show, otherwise this would have been extremely short. So I put it in there as a plot element, which you see later in the game. So you can read this, or you can just completely ignore it, chuck it in the bin, which I'll do now, because hopefully I'll make a different video about that. This bit of art's awful. Unfortunately, that's the other thing, is by the time I decided to move on to the main story, I had so little time that a lot of this stuff isn't very polished at all. I've also put in a comic that I made later after this one. When I was tidying the graphics up for this, I thought, you know what, I may as well go in, as it's already got one story spinning off from it, I may as well retroactively put my newer one into it as well, so that somebody could potentially just play Blue Hag and yet get all of the story spin off into one story, massive story, come back out of it, spin off into another story, come back out of it. So that's Mumify McCree in there, which I won't play now because hopefully I'll do a video for that as well. So you've got three options here, and I tried to go for mainly Scottish stuff, but that doesn't really work with the news. Somebody to give me the feedback, which I agree with, that having the TV at this angle, because I started with it at the same angle as the establishing shot, I had it at that same perspective, so it's all askew to the frame. And I realised, firstly, that was stupid because it didn't give me enough space to make everything clear, and secondly, apparently it doesn't come across anyway that it's TV, so it's really really a bit pointless. I tried to go for Scottish animals, so you've got a seal there, and that is The High Life, which is a sitcom on the BBC, a Scottish sitcom starring Alan Cummings amongst others, and that was very funny. I loved that in the 90s. And then there's an allusion to the comic as well, so perhaps you'll come back out and then think about reading it if you couldn't be bothered before. Or if you don't bother reading it, at least you're told that it exists. You might, I'm kind of covering my bets there and going, well, if someone doesn't even notice it there, at least I'll see the advert. And I name checked The High Life there because I had no idea if anyone would even be able to work out what it was, even if they were the biggest High Life fan. Looking at this drawing, it's not really very obvious. Final thing is a Scottish film, Dog Soldiers. So on one side you've got the animal shelter, and on the other side you've got Winter Wonderland. So there's a hint for both branches. This art's not very good. I didn't have time to look into how real artists actually make ice sculptures and with shading and stuff. So I just half-assed it and designed to be decided because that comes up as one of your choices. I was making the story up as I went, and I kind of realised, hang on, well, what does the Cailleach bird do? What's her life cycle kind of thing? She wakes up, she starts winter, and then how does she have this house? Like, how does she have neighbours? What's she actually going to do? Because I was like, oh, it'd be funny to have her in modern life. But I was like, well, wait a minute, why is she in modern life? And so the idea is that she needs somewhere to be, basically. So she's got a couple of businesses set up to make some money, pay her mortgage, and then she turns into a statue for most of the year. And she does a bit of animal volunteering because that is part of her mythology, that she likes animals and stuff. I think it's been quite a while since I did it. I prefer the animal shelter just because it's got cuter animals, and I think I thought of that first, and it's got a bit more invention in it. Bonnie Animal Shelter. Probably Scottish people playing this will be very annoyed at all the stereotypes, so sorry about that. It's a joke because her name is Bonnie. Do you see? And she's ginger because she's Scottish. Yeah, I did a bit of research there for Scottish animals. So obviously Cailleach bird has a pseudonym Kelly because in fiction you always come up with a pseudonym that has some kind of clever meaning or mirroring or something, instead of just calling yourself Joan. Here you can see he's got some shading there and not on there because I think when I was tidying up the art I deleted that, and I think we asked to go back in because it didn't look great anyway. Lovely 80s effects, just draw some white lines over everything. It's like a Highlander or something. You can see that I was rushing at this point because she hasn't bothered drawing a face or anything. I was just done it as a circle. This actually, when I tidied up, I went in and gave him a face. He was a stick guy. He didn't have hair or a face or anything, so I tidied that up. And now is the crime scene investigation thing, which I did in a kind of Sherlock style, which is what everybody uses now. This is the trick of the day: is to show somebody's really insightful by having them look at things and letters pop up. So Sherlock does it. If you watch The Flash, he does it. It's ridiculous. So these are hints. These are for you to work out the mystery later, which is like a little half-assed mystery. But I tried to work it out so that there are 3 people you accuse, and one of them has all the hints, and 2 of them have only got a couple of things match up. It's like playing Guess Who, really. Pagan Deity is really just to tell you that gets Kelly to decide who she's going to. That's less for the player and more for her to justify who she goes and talks to. And then the comic as well, which again is the part of the perpetrator's plan, which I just kind of stuck in because after I decided to insert it into the story, I decided to make it part of the story. This is instead of Skype, it's pipe because it's bagpipes because it's Scottish. It's the kind of Pixar style world building pun, which some people don't like. But I think if you're doing other jokes as well, I think it's fun to stick a few of those in. I was quite happy with how I used Quine here to have you can come in and come out, you can accuse whenever you want. It's not as good as you could with a fully fledged, like I don't know, with Unity or something. You could probably get it a bit more complicated and slick, but I'm still pretty happy with this. So this is Noel Christmas. It was a real character. It's kind of mixed up in the whole Santa Claus, Father Christmas, Noel Christmas. They're all kind of like these similar characters who eventually got split apart or discarded or amalgamated. And so I just thought it'd be quite funny that he was annoyed that he gets, because Noel Christmas is always about being very frugal and reserved. So it's kind of completely the opposite of the capitalist pig dog Santa Claus. So we have the clue about him rubbing his hands. Is that the moisturiser? Oh, who knows? Right, I've got a tiny little hang-up symbol here, which I'm not sure if that used to be bigger in the old version or not. I might have balked that when I was George Lucasing stuff, but hopefully someone will go, well, there's nothing else for me to click on and spot the little pink box. Black Alice, and he actually is kind of similar to Kelly in that they're both hags, but she is kind of a nasty one-eyed one who flays children's skin. So One Eye is Clue with the monocle. She's also got an easel there. She's an artist. She says she does paintings. which is a clue about the comic. What was the other clue? It was moisturiser, which is quite obscure. I don't know whether anyone would catch it, but that matches flaying their skin. So that's it. So you've got moisturiser, flaying skin, monocle. It all fits. For Woden, who is a version of Odin, but again, it's one of those things where it's all mixed up. So he kind of technically counts as a British pagan deity, I think. Unless I gave up on that, but I think I was trying to keep them all British. But it's all the cultures stole their gods from each other and stuff, didn't they? So, but the helpful thing was that he's got one eye as well, so that's why that matched quite well with Black Anis. So 2 of them the monocle works for. That's pretty much the only thing. So he's kind of out of it. He's out of the running as a suspect, really, because the moisturiser doesn't mean anything, and the comic doesn't really mean anything. But having said that, then Noel Christmas only has the moisturiser. So really, Noel's got the moisturiser, but doesn't have the monocle or the comic really. Woden has the monocle, but no particular reason to have the moisturiser or the comic. So it's, I think, pretty clear who the suspect is. Give the player a little action. I tend not to give the player anything to click on unless they're making a choice. But sometimes, like when it's actiony, I want them to feel like they're doing stuff, so I let them click on her there. And that is the rushed ending. Hooray! And I just had to say the kid, no children have died, so it's all very happy. If you accuse Noel Christmas, I tried to give him a motive, which kind of makes sense. That worked out quite well. Apart from the moisturising thing, because he was rubbing his hands, not really much reason to pick him. And also he's got a pretty good alibi. You just have to take my word for it that he didn't do it. The art for him actually came from a comic that I did. A friend wrote a Viz style comic called Pastor Gash and his Stash Dash or something like that. And it was about a porn addicted vicar who had to hide his copious amounts of porn from the archdeacon or whatever, kind of Father Ted type situation. And this was the grumpy old bishop. So I just kind of nicked him so that I didn't have to spend as much time designing a new guy. And you can probably tell because the lines were a bit like the brushwork's a bit more spindly. I didn't really have the time to kind of readjust him to the thick line art. But there you go. It was Game Jam. Don't hassle me. My first attempt with Quine. I liked some things about it. I thought I had there was some clever ideas. I quite liked the murder mystery thing. The occasional bit of art I did for it, I was quite liked. But overall, it was me getting. I didn't plan it properly, and so I didn't have enough time to get it really nice. So it's a bit rushed, and there's lots of wonky art in there, and didn't quite get the process down pat. I was a lot happier with my next one, which is Mima Farm Crew, which hopefully I'll do another video about. But I'm glad I did this. There's some nice stuff in there, and hopefully people enjoy it. Thank you for watching.